Howdy, all. I'm Adam, the Renaissance Nerd, and once again, we return to the Star Wars Expanded Universe Book Club with Book 1 of the Jedi Academy Trilogy, Jedi Search, by Kevin J. Anderson. All right, this was, and again, first of all, I want to apologize for the Legends tag. Legends is a dirty word on this channel, but when I ordered these to replace my lost books from years ago, the order said, the script said that it didn't have the Legends tag on it, and then they arrived with the Legends tag. So there's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is. We suffer to continue the book club. Anyway, Jedi Academy Trilogy. This was the second major foray of the expanded universe. This was written in 1994. We're just out of the Zahn Trilogy at that point. At the same time, the Dark Empire comic was being released. So we're still in the infancy of the EU when these were written. And nobody was completely sure it was really going to go. And we were pleasantly surprised that there were more Star Wars adventures coming. Because when the Zahn Trilogy ended, we thought, oh, okay, fine, that's it. Okay, we got 3 more books. We got 3 more stories, and we're going to be happy. But then, boom, the EU kicked off. And it just kept going, and it got better and better. Now, Jedi Search, the Jedi Academy Trilogy in general, is not without its faults in retrospect and hindsight. There are retconning problems that have to be addressed, and I will address them. Also, I will address the fact that Kevin J. Anderson, not the strongest of the Star Wars Expanded Universe authors, not the strongest, did a good job, but compared to as things got bigger and certain other authors stepped in, not the best in the end, but not the worst. Either way, I'm not to say that this trilogy isn't good. It's an excellent trilogy because of what it sets up, and that's why we're going to focus today. We're going to breeze through the overall story without too many spoilers. At the same time, though, I really want to focus on the characters, and because, again, the Jedi Academy trilogy serves as literally the term expanded universe was created. It serves to service that. It expanded the universe of Star Wars. It expanded that galaxy far, far away. We get more lore. We get more locales. We get exploring to locales we had only heard of at this point in name only. And we get more characters, and we get the thing that I think a lot of fans at the time and to this day really want. We want to see a thriving rebirth of the Jedi Order. We want to see Jedi Knights. Some people say, oh, I don't really care about Jedis. Well, more people than not care about seeing Jedi because Jedi are cool. Jedi are cool. So that's why this was so interesting, because we are fresh off the events of Dark Empire. Let's get into it here. Fresh off the events of Dark Empire. It's been over a year at this point, because at the end of Dark Empire, we learned that Leia was pregnant with Anakin Solo, the third child of the Solos. And by this point, he has been born and whisked away to protective custody to keep out of the eyes of threats and also outside influence, because these are force-sensitive children. You do not want negative things filtering in. So he's been whisked away. It's been over a year, and we have to remember that during the events of Dark Empire, Luke fell to the dark side. Palpatine in his clone body, because remember, it's not just the clone emperor, it was Palpatine, it was his soul. He had figured out soul transference. It was Palpatine. Palpatine had beaten Luke mentally. He had outsmarted him, because, let's face it, Palpatine was a genius. He was a tactical genius, and a true mastermind, making puppets dance all over the galaxy. He had outsmarted Luke. Luke fell to the dark side, but thanks to Leia, he was able to claw his way out. And now, a year later, Luke is ready to complete his dream of restoring the Jedi Knights. So we begin, though, in this story with Han and Chewie on an ambassadorial mission to Kessel. Remember the term, the spice mines of Kessel. Well, now we get our first look at Kessel. Kessel is a kind of broken world, barely being held together by artificial means with atmosphere and gravity. But it's got a treasure. It's got spice. And what is spice in the Star Wars galaxy? No, it's not like Dune. It is basically a psychotropic essence that allows people temporary telepathic abilities, and it's used for all manner of things. And Kessel has the most concentrated, potent version of the spice. They call it glitter stem. And spice mines of Kessel were once upon a time were an imperial not stronghold, but an imperial occupied space where they had a garrison. It was used as a prison workhouse where political dissidents were sent to toil away in the spice mines of Kessel. But after the events of the Thrawn trilogy and now the Second Galactic Civil War, which happened during Dark Empire, Kessel is no longer under Imperial control. So the New Republic send Han and Chewie, who have smuggler ties, to go and open up communications to hopefully create a nice legal commercial exchange for spice. Well, things don't go well because as soon as Han and Chewie arrive, they are attacked by the motley fleet of Kessel, and they don't know what's going on. And in very shocking opening, you can see right here on the cover, the Millennium Falcon gets shot down. The Millennium Falcon crash lands on Kessel. You're like, oh shit, what's going on, man? So right away, we give Kevin J. Anderson credit for creating a situation, a first time ever in Star Wars. The Millennium Falcon gets bested and lands in a gnarly manner. Han and Chewie get scooped up and are quickly incarcerated by Morith Duel, who is now in control of Kessel. And we learn that Morith Duel was once upon a time the smuggler hookup to smuggle spice out to nefarious entities such as Jabba the Hutt and other criminal organizations. And he was the one that screwed over Han, which forced Han to jettison his cargo, which put the bounty on his head. And so Jabba also blamed Morith Duel and had his people, carve out his eye back then. And Duel then created a rebellion on Kessel, and then he's the one in control now. He's the one in control, but he's a crazy little frog-like alien who's paranoid of everything. And as soon as he heard it was Solo there, he ordered them shot down. He brings Solo there, and he blames Han for everything. And long story short, for punishment, Han and Chewie get sent to the spice mines of Kessel, where while down in there, they meet one Kip Duron, a new character introduced to the Star Wars expanded universe. Kip Duron, who after we get through this little arc of them in the spice mines, we learn that he is Force sensitive. That once upon a time, that same ancient Jedi who encountered Leia in Dark Empire spent some time on Kessel, and she awakened Kip's Force sensitivity. And Kip has been able to survive in the mines for about a decade. He's been able to survive there because of his Force sensitivity and the little bit he knew. And he's basically been imprisoned on Kessel throughout the entire rebellion and the Thrawn and everything. He's been there, like I said, for over a decade. His parents were political prisoners. His brother also was a political prisoner, but then sent off to Stormtrooper camp on the planet Karita, which we're going to come back to when we talk about Leia's arc in this. And he's a guy who hasn't seen daylight forever. But then Han shows him some kindness, and they connect in there, and together eventually, with a little luck and a little this and that, Han, Chewie, and Kip eventually do escape the spice mines of Kessel, and also manage to get off Kessel itself. And they are then entering the unique galactic, how do I put this? Well, there's a unique feature around Kessel. That's one of the biggest important introduction to the expanded universe, the Maw Cluster. What is the Maw Cluster? The Maw Cluster is a collection of black holes that just happen to be perfectly balanced, whereas they are not destroying each other. And it's just a cluster of black holes, and it's a death trap. So as they escape Kessel, thanks to Kip's Force sensitivity, Han, Chewie, and Kip on an old Imperial shuttle running away from Morith Duel's ragtag fleet, they head into the Maw Cluster. Now, we'll come back to that later. Meanwhile, Han's arc takes place about over a 2 to 3 week period. He's on Kessel for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then the rest of that takes place in the Maul cluster. But again, we're going to come back to that as always when the storylines converge in the third act. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, we got dueling plot arcs here at the beginning. One, we have Leia. Leia is now the Minister of State, which is like basically higher up in the New Republic cabinet, one of Mon Mothma's chief lieutenants. Mon Mothma is, of course, now Chief of State of the New Republic. Leia has a lot of political duties. She feels like her life is being pulled in this direction or that direction. She still skimps on her Jedi training. She's not doing the best job as Luke's student right now. At the same time, after 2 years in hiding, Jaina and Jason, the Solo twins, are now coming back to her. They've been in hiding for 2 years till they got old enough that they can understand the world and actually start to learn a little Jedi techniques so they can block out negative influences and not be damaged by have their emotions damaged or accidentally turned towards the dark side. So she's excited because within a week her children are coming home, but now she's angry because Han has not contacted her. Little does she doesn't know that Han has been imprisoned and things have gone bad, and she starts making excuses for herself. And I'm gonna criticize Kevin J. Anderson a little bit. I feel that Leia's mechanism for making the excuse that Han hasn't contacted her because he's off gallivanting with old smuggler pals, I feel like that's a little out of character for Leia. I didn't like that in this reread. It stuck out to me because I'm like, Leia's smarter than this. She wouldn't behave like this. She's a little more focused on when something's wrong. Now, maybe you can attribute this to the fact that she's being pulled in 10 different directions, and as the story begins, she is now preparing for an ambassador from Kalrita, which is still an Imperial stronghold where the best of the best Imperial Academy exists. Now, they're very resistant. The ambassador coming over is a Palpatine loyalist, and he does nothing but antagonize her constantly, both over comms, over holographic display, and when he actually arrives on Coruscant. But it's her job to try and make this work. So she's being pulled in that direction. Throughout the book, you see her being yanked upon by a lot of little minuscule details that, lower level officials should be able to figure out on their own. But no. They keep bugging her. So Leia's really stressed out. So maybe you can attribute to her making the excuse and allowing herself to get angry at Han for just not being there by the fact that her work-life balance is completely out of whack. And especially it gets double that when Winter arrives with the twins, and the fact that the twins don't really know their mother. And Leia doesn't really know her children because they haven't really been together that often in the past 2 years. Therefore, Leia is questioning her ability to be a mother. She's questioning her ability to understand her children and this and that. And you see that Leia's personal life is a little chaotic right now. So maybe that's why she is playing these mind games with herself, to not focusing on the fact that Han isn't here, so I'm just going to be mad that he isn't here. And it culminates later on, but again, we'll get to that when I do a drill down on the third act. During this period of time, Luke, as I said, he is now a year out of having recovered from his fall to the dark side. He has worked hard to rebalance himself. He is stronger than ever in the Force, and he's more focused than ever on restoring the Jedi to the galaxy, because he believes now that the New Republic has a firm hold as the strongest galactic presence, he believes that the Jedi must be there to do what the Jedi did in the Old Republic, to serve as guardians of peace and justice. So he begins his journey. First, he makes a request to the newly formed Senate, who agree to it right away. I mean, you get that feeling that because Kevin J. Anderson, he brings out a lot of the old guard names in this book, and I'm going to comment on that towards the end of the video. And everybody rallies to Luke about that. He's like, "Great, go do it. We support this." And thanks to both Luke's own research and then a opportunistic moment, or a lucky moment, by General Wedge Antilles, who's doing reconstruction work in the post-Second Civil War. They discover an old Imperial interrogation lab where they did some horrible things. You can just tell. They give a really interesting description of what it looks like in there. But what they discover in there are old tools that Palpatine and Vader used to identify Jedi or Force-sensitive individuals. Now, remember, this is early on in the EU. George had not done the prequels yet, so this is the beginning of stuff that kind of might feel a little odd in the retrospect of what we understand about Jedi and the Old Republic and sensing things and sensing Force sensitives. So a device was introduced in these books. It's basically a scanner that can show somebody who is Force sensitive with like a blue aura around them. So using that, and also during his training with Leia, Luke discovers that if you touch a certain part of the mind, somewhere like the back where memories and instinctual feelings are focused, if you touch that on a Force sensitive, that Force sensitive individual will do an instinctive Force push. And Luke discovers that's a great way to find a Force sensitive. So, armed with these tools, Luke sets out to find his first set of candidates, his first apprentices. And in this book, he comes across two. In his journey, first he comes across a dying world where these colonists and this and that. And also, again, we have to understand that Luke's reasonings for finding things, again, we didn't have George's rules on the old Jedi Order where there were no families, no attachments. And we get lines in this like Luke saying, tracing Jedi lineage, Jedi bloodlines. Well, we know for a fact that George, when he rewrote the rules of stuff, Jedi were not allowed to they weren't allowed to marry, have companions like that, because it would affect their emotional state and maybe leave them open to the passions that would turn one towards the dark side. So again, we have to understand. You got to do a little retconning in here and understand. Okay, we know for a fact that, well, Anakin being a perfect example, Jedi always didn't follow that rule. So you kind of got to let that one slide. But there are some in here that we're not going to let slide. Some retconning that we have to, in retrospect, be like, but we'll get to that towards the end of the video. So Luke has bloodline tracking in mind, and he traced one particular Jedi escapee from what we now know, what eventually known as Order 66, to a dying little world called Eel Shah, where he finds that her descendant is a stern individual called Gantoris. And after some rigorous trials by Gantoris, Luke does eventually convince him to come along, because Gantoris is hesitant because he says he has had dreams of a dark man who would take him from the planet, teach him the ways of the Force, and lead him to his doom. But eventually Gantoris is convinced and he comes with Luke, and then Luke and Gantoris head back to Bespin, where they find a gas prospector by the name of Streen, who has run away from the regular world because of his Force sensitivity. He can't block out the minds of society. So he likes solitude, but he wants to return to society. So he decides to go with Luke with the promise of being taught to control his Force abilities so that he can block out the minds of the masses and also join a community of Jedi, of people like him. So Luke gets his first two trainees or apprentices and heads back to Coruscant, where he will then join the third act. Meanwhile, as we said, Leia was trying to help Luke during this process, not only to find a planet where they can have the what Luke was calling the Jedi Academy. Duh, it's called the Jedi Academy Trilogy. And meanwhile, Lando comes into play. We get a nice little mini Lando story within this, because Lando gets a nice little chapter all his own where he's trying to hunt down a possible Force perspective. Bottom line, it's a bust. But what Lando does do is Lando hits it rich again, because Lando's a little down on his luck after the previous events of the past couple story arcs. And he's able to come into some money and this and that. And eventually, because of that, he's able to use that newfound wealth to help everybody in the third act. Okay, so we've kind of covered everything that's going on. So now let's just talk about the third act and what goes on in there. What happens here is now everything's coming together. Leia is at the pinnacle of her political work-life stress, where the ambassador from Karita has arrived, and he's just making a giant stink, culminating in a garden party where he goes so far as to throw his drink, which comes from his own special supply, in Mon Mothma's face. Now, we're going to remember this moment. It's very important. We'll come back to it later. Well, not later. I mean, in later books. Just remember that moment right there. And it's a bit of a disaster, but it's not a political disaster for Leia because, of course, no one's angry at her. She did her best. Meanwhile, though, everybody is now concerned that Han has not checked in for over 2 weeks. So Lando and Luke have agreed to take a little trip to Kessel under the guise of Lando being an investor, thanks to the money that he got during his own little adventure. And what happens now is Luke and Lando arrive on Kessel, and they start to try and get evidence that Han and Chewie were there. Now, Morith Duel, he is aware that someone from the New Republic is eventually going to come looking, and he's terrible at pretending. And Lando and Luke figure out eventually what's going on. Meanwhile, as we said earlier, the Maul, Han, Chewie, and Kip have entered the Maul cluster. And what do they find in the Maul cluster? An Imperial base. 4 fully armed and operational Imperial Star Destroyers commanded by one Admiral Daala, the only female admiral in the Imperial Navy. We'll talk about Daala in a little bit here. Immediately, they're captured, they get interrogated, and we learn that what we have here, the Maul installation, is a giant think tank set up by one Grand Moff Tarkin to basically come up with Imperial superweapons. Now, we're going to run into a little retcon problem thanks to the prequel trilogy. Remember, this is 94. Prequel trilogy didn't start till 99, and Attack of the Clones didn't come out till 2002. So we're going to have a little bit of a problem here, but we'll come back to that in a moment when I get to it, because what we just... Basically, though, these Daala and her troops and everybody in there have been out of touch for over a decade. They have no idea that the rebellion has succeeded, that Tarkin is dead, the Emperor is dead, Vader is dead, everybody's dead, and the Thrawn is dead, and the Imperial warlords aren't even fighting amongst themselves anymore. They're all retreating. But Daala realizes now that this is her time, not so much to shine, but to just get revenge. Because here, let's talk about Daala for a minute. Admiral Daala, you see her, that's her right there on the cover. This is an example of a well-crafted female antagonist. Powerful, strong, smart, intelligent, but not perfect. Daala was basically discovered by Tarkin while she was in the Imperial Academy on Karita, where she in her own personal monologues, as we get to know her here, she was basically kept down by the patriarchy. And she resents it, but she doesn't resent men. She resents the system that Palpatine created. And her loyalty wasn't to Palpatine, her loyalty was to Tarkin, who was her lover. That's right, folks. Grand Moff Tarkin is not gay. He's not gay. He was a heterosexual male in actual real Star Wars, and he took Daala as his lover because he loved her mind and he loved her personality, and he respected her strength. And she loved his strength. Of course, he's massively older than she was at the time of the rebellion or before the rebellion. But she was in love with his mind and his designs and his strength and fortitude and his vision. And to spite everybody, Tarkin said, I'm going to give you the most important job I have, and that you're to guard the scientists that are going to make the super weapons that are going to have the Empire be in power for eternity. Well, Daala was put in charge here, and she kept it. She kept a hard line. Everything went well, and from the installation came the Death Star. Now, we have to do a little retconning here. We have to figure out how can we make this work with the fact that at the end of Attack of the Clones on Geonosis, we see that Dooku has the plans to the Death Star. Because one, Kui Zux, an alien scientist, she's blue skin, got a lot of feathery hair, listen to that. One of the kind of scientists, basically, we get introduced to her. She's the kind of scientist where she doesn't want to believe that her inventions, her ideas are going to be used for nefarious means. She believes in just the joy of thinking and creation and altruism like that. In this book, it is revealed that she was the designer, the creator of the Death Star. But then how can we reconcile that with Attack of the Clones, where we see that Dooku has plans to the Death Star, which he hands off to Palps at the end of the movie? How do we reconcile that? I thought about this, so walk with me here. Unfortunately, we have to do a little retconning because, as I've always said, the EU eventually does integrate the prequel trilogy into its existence, and we accept what happens, and it is all one. Very simple solution I lay before you to keep this so that you can keep all this canon straight and not feel like it's breaking the canon that Lucas put into play with Episode 2. The Death Star plans existed before Tarkin set up the Constellation, but it was a design. One can say that when Kwisatz says that she created the Death Star, she's the one that made it a reality. When the plans reached her at the Constellation, she's the one that made it a reality. Therefore, she did create the Death Star. That's how I'm going to look at this. That's how I'm going to create some connective tissue so that what George did in 2002 can still line up with a Kevin J. Anderson, which was approved by George Lucas. Remember, Lucas had approval of every single EU book. This is how we connect it. This is how we can make it work. So that's what I put forth to you. To those who are reading the EU books and you want to try and make sure that these ideas don't conflict, there's my solution. Yes, the idea for the Death Star existed during the Clone Wars, and by the time Tarkin was put in control of creating it, putting it together, it reached Kwisatz at the Constellation, and she made it a reality. Therefore, she did create the Death Star. She made the idea, the concept, a reality. Now, from her, then, we can go move forward. She also created the World Devastators that we saw in Dark Empire, and she has created the latest super weapon, the Sun Crusher, a fighter-sized ship capable of destabilizing a star and causing a supernova. Oh, that's the Sun Crusher. Now, while we're there, we also see there's a skeletal frame of a prototype Death Star at the mall where they were working on it before they were constructing it. As we see at the end of Episode 3. So there you go. That's the Constellation. That's Kwisatz. That's Admiral Daala. And Admiral Daala, as I said, to go back to Daala, Admiral Daala in charge of this. She's a good character because she's not perfect. Yes, she hates the patriarchy, but she doesn't hate men. And she's not angry at men in general. She's not a third wave feminist. She is just a strong woman who understands that the system was not built for her, but then found a way to work the system and still believed in the system as a whole, believed in the ideas of the Empire, what the strictness, what the order that the Empire provided. She believed in that. She believed in the military. She believed in Tarkin's dreams, Tarkin's ideas. So what happens? Why do I say she's not bad? Because also, she makes mistakes. You get to the point of eventually Han convinces Dr. Zux that her inventions were used for mass destruction. And she turns and she helps free Han, Kip, and Chewie, and they make an escape in the Sun Crusher, which is nigh invulnerable due to its armor design. So as the escape is happening, Han plows through literally the bridge using the Sun Crusher of one of Daala's Star Destroyers. And Daala thought she had it all perfectly planned. She thought everything was just right. And boom, she's defeated by a ragged smuggler or a former smuggler, his Wookiee co-pilot, force-sensitive slave, and a mad scientist. It all just literally blows up her. She loses an entire Star Destroyer in this. And Han and the Sun Crusher with his little crew, they escape, and then Daala says that's it. Because Daala's plan, mind you also, again, let's show you that she's not a goody two-shoes villain, that she's really good-hearted side. She just needs to be befriended and turned. No, Daala's plan was to emerge from the Maul cluster with her 4-star destroyers, fully equipped with squadrons of TIE fighters, multiple AT-ATs and AT-STs, thousands of stormtroopers. They were going to emerge with the Sun Crusher and wreak havoc on the New Republic and use the Sun Crusher to destroy every single New Republic star system. Everybody. She was ready to commit mass genocide because she was angry that Tarkin was dead. Revenge for the destruction of the Empire. Not to create a new empire, not to be into control, simply revenge. Good character. And she's got flaws. She's got flaws. That's what she makes a great character. Now, as Han is escaping the Maul cluster with Daala chasing right behind him, meanwhile, back on Kessel, Luke and Lando have busted Duel, and Duel is then chasing them. Now, they managed to steal the repaired Millennium Falcon, and much as Han and Kip and Chewie escaped into the Maul cluster, Luke says we're going to escape in there because the Navicomputer, which is required for hyperspace calculations, is not working on the Falcon because they Duel disabled it. So as Luke and Lando are heading toward the Maul cluster to do what Kip did, because Kip used his force sensitivity to guide them through the black holes into the center. Luke is going to do the same thing. Well, Han emerges with the Sun Crusher, followed by Daala's fleet. So what we have here is a nice little frenetic battle between Daala's fleet and Duel's Kessel fleet as they smash together. Han, Luke, Lando, and their crews, they make their escape. They get the hells out of there. And kind of the end of the story. And what we end up with at the very end here is it's an interesting end to this. Because remember, this is meant to be a trilogy. It's 3 books. We didn't have some sort of epic grand battle at the end here. No massive lightsaber duel. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. What we had here is just a setup. This is a setup. This book is a setup for what's to come. So now here's the state of play at the end of Jedi Search. Luke has 2 new students. Thanks to Leia's efforts, he has been granted the use of Yavin 4 to set up his new Jedi Academy. Han has returned home. He is reunited with his children, and he is happy to see his wife and children again. But they know that things are not going to be all hunky-dory because Daala, after smashing Duel's fleet to nothing, is now out there with 3 fully armed and angry Star Destroyers, ready to conduct guerrilla warfare on the New Republic, with no intention other than to cause destruction. We're not talking about conquering or occupation, just destruction. So there you have it. That's a setup. And now Luke is ready to continue his search for fresh candidates. Han and Leia are now looking towards helping the New Republic deal with the new threat of Daala. And there we go. That's about it. So this is a setup book because things are only going to get more interesting as we get into the next 2 books, of culminating in the events in the 3rd book, Champions of the Force. So as I said, let's briefly, I talked about it a little bit as we went along, but let's just talk about how the characters are presented in this. Han, this is kind of Han's book in a way because he just gets so much great screen time, how he struggles in not only the spice mines, but he's still Han at heart. He never breaks. When he's captured by Daala, she interrogates him brutally, but he doesn't break. He's still Han. He's still looking for that way out, and he's still got that rebellious streak in him. It never ends, and that's Han to the core. Yet at the same time, throughout his trials in this, all he wants to do is get back to his family. He is heartbroken that he's not going to be there when his children arrive. He's heartbroken that he can't see Leia. And it's great. And it's Han. That's why Han is my favorite character. He's deep. There's more than just the scoundrel on the surface. There's so much more to Han Solo. Luke is great in this because we still get the fact that Luke has overcome so much, but he's still got that uncertainty. He doesn't know if, as now a Jedi Master, if he can pull this off. He still has doubts. Can he train these new students? Can he do this? And you start to question this because now, as he's interacting with these first students that he's finding, you begin to understand a little bit why the Jedi find younglings Why they get them while they're young. Well, why you recruit them as young is because then they can develop in a proper way where they're going to think more like a Jedi and not just like a person. Because again, Taurus, he's a little gruff and he looks like he doesn't quite understand things because he's been isolated on his world. Streen, when we find him, he is scared of the world. These are grown ass men. And then when you get to Kip, who's had a little bit of his eyes open to the Force, doesn't understand the nuances of the Force. While he's in captivity at Daala's mall installation, he goes internally and starts to think about how the Imperials have done nothing but ruin his whole life. And when he's trying to affect the world with with a Force ability, telekinesis, he feels a little twinge when he's angry. Kip doesn't understand that there's the light side and the dark side. And he says at one point, he goes, wait a minute, is anger a way to help focus this? I'm going to keep using anger as a tool to focus my Force sensitivity. There you have a problem. We already have the thing set up where Luke is now going to be, he has 3 students because Kip joins him at the end of the book. He's got 3 of his, what's going to be, I think, 7 or 8 students. And Luke is right to be worried. Can he deal with adults who are set in their ways, who might have adult emotions built in that might lead them to the dark side, or a young uninitiated Force user who doesn't even know the dark side exists and found the easy path using anger already? Luke is worried. He doesn't know if he can do things right. So Luke, our hero, is still imperfect, and that's why he's relatable. He has the worries, the fears. But in the end, the way he's going to build his new Jedi Order, that's why his new Jedi Order is going to be better than the old Jedi Order because of this. But we'll talk about that as we get farther into EU. Leia, as I said, I already talked about Leia, so I'm not going to rehash that. Like I said, Daala is great as a new villain. Not another villain in the vein of Thrawn. We're not dealing with a Force user. We're dealing with somebody who is in the world of the mundane, but is still powerful and dangerous. And that's why Kevin J. Anderson starts us off well by giving us a situation that doesn't necessarily involve the tug of war of light side versus dark side. It's a mundane thing going on. And now that's not saying we're not going to get some Force issues as we get deeper into the trilogy. It does appear. But again, Kevin J. Anderson does a good job of giving us a new take on it. As a little kid, when I first read this, I was a little annoyed that it played out this way, but as an adult, I appreciate it so much more because it's a little more meta and it's unique in its use of a Force threat, a dark side threat. Now, as a whole, the book is good. It's not bad. 353 pages of solid Star Wars story, character development, but first, we forgive some of the problems with retconning. At one point, they reference what led up to the creation of the Empire, and Palpatine wanted to become president of the Senate. So you understand, again, that's a moment where you just have to ignore what happened. You gotta ignore that, pretend that little Leia's reminiscing about Mon Mothma and her history at one point, and how she and Bail Organa were trying to moderate what was going on. But Palpatine as Senator Palpatine wanted to become president, so you can't reconcile that. You just have to say, okay, didn't happen that way. This is wrong. Maybe Leia didn't have her history right. That's about the best you can do. She didn't have her history right. Secondly, there are, of course, other little things in here that are retcon problems. We already talked about the Death Star problem. We talk about some misconceptions. There's like a misconception of Yoda in here. Leia thinks that he was on Dagobah for centuries, and no, no. So there's no concept of what the Jedi Order looked like during the Old Republic in this. Kevin J. Anderson didn't really give us one like that. But we have to accept it. That's, again, Leia. That's coming from Leia about Yoda, so maybe Leia didn't know that Yoda wasn't on there for centuries. Maybe Luke didn't really talk to her about it. So that's, you could say Leia's got misinformation. The only other real complaint I have is that at times Kevin J. Anderson lays it on a little thick with original trilogy member berries. He's throwing in there too many old school characters as references are on the scene. He uses some phrasing over and over again too much. Some situations that are too similar. Too many times trying to link these current EU events to the OT. he would have been better maybe not doing that. And also he had a an interesting habit in this of, and I don't know if it's him or an editor, and that's one of the reasons I say, what the hell do you need an editor for if they're going to do this, of repeating people's full names when you're in the head of a character who already knows them. It's a little, or reintroducing somebody that you already introduced in that same way earlier in the book and just repeating who they were. Now, I don't know if that was him or a useless editor. Who knows? But it's a little tedious, and that's one of my few criticisms. But like I said, it's not a bad book. I feel like, Kevin J. Anderson, he does a Jedi Academy trilogy. He does a couple other books in the long run. But others who end up being much stronger Star Wars authors do carry the faith further than he could. But it's not bad, and it's a good start. And this is a good start to his trilogy, and it gets better because now again we are moving on to book two. Book 2, Dark Apprentice, which you can obviously, I've already kind of alluded to the fact that Kip is having already a problem with the dark side as Luke tries to teach him. But there's more than meets the eye going on. So next time we are doing Dark Apprentice, Book 2 in the Jedi Academy trilogy. Again, I apologize for Legends Tag. When we get to Champions of the Force, third book, Champions of the Force, the third book, speak slowly, Adam, I will be using my original book that I have carried with me for all these decades. It's still good stuff, though. It's still good stuff. So you see, guys, look, I love the EU, but I'm not above being critical of something when there are mistakes or we have a problem with a retcon. I'm not a blind fanboy. There is room for criticism. But Dark Apprentice, I'm not going to give a timetable for reading and putting it out because I've decided that timetables are not good, and not everybody's really reading these at the same time as me. Some of you know who you are. You just kept on going as we started. So no way I could keep up with my real-life schedule, YouTube schedule, and other things. Either way, so I will try to get this out in due time, cover it, and then move on Champions of the Force and keep moving. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I look forward to the next book. I look forward to chatting more with all of you, talking about the EU. And as always, the EU is there waiting for you. You simply have to embrace it. Because real Star Wars exists. It's not Disney Star Wars. It's real Star Wars. And it's there, and it's still wonderful, and it's still glorious. All right, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button, like it, share it, comment away. I love to hear from you. Thanks again. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next book. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me at therentnerd@gmail.com. That email's for channel business only, so I check it on a daily basis. Also, you can find me at the Geeks and Gamers forums under @ROAS, and you can find me at Rumble and Odyssey, The Renaissance Nerd. Thank you again. See you next time.